This morning, we shine a spotlight on the true meaning of Christmas. And to help me do so, I welcome Vicar General, Father Martin Sirju. Good morning, Father.
Good morning, Rocket.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well.
I'm very happy to have you on this morning. We started talking off air, and you mentioned that you feel as though the real reason for the season has been lost.
Yes.
Tell me why you get that feeling.
Well, we are a victim of our own scientific progress. So because of commercialism, technology, social media, and so on, we get messages of like goodness, kindness, love, peace, and so on. And all of that is wonderful. But Christmas goes a little deeper to locate the roots of that.
Right.
Yeah. So I like to start with a story. You know, when I say a story, I think it's God's story with us. And it's a specifically Christian story because one can talk about a generic kind of Christmas that applies to everybody. But in its roots, Christmas is a Christian feast, and therefore it has specific Christian roots. And it really flows from the most fundamental doctrine of Christian faith, that we believe that God is a family of persons. God is Father, Son, and Spirit. That's the mystery, three in one. And that Godhead of the Trinity wants to share his life with us and his love with us. And hence God created the world, and then God created us. And he wants us to share in his life, in his love. But, of course, sin crept in at some point and started to mess things up and continues to mess things up. And he has sent several persons along the way. We can say Abraham, we can say the prophets, we can say King David, and so on, to remind us of what this life is like and what this covenant of love is like. But I suppose it's like, listen. And they still didn't listen.
So you had to send the big dogs.
Yeah. Send the big man himself. You know, it's like communicating with someone by telephone or by WhatsApp and so on, FaceTime and things like that. But when the person actually comes, that's a big moment.
Right.
And so, and what did he come to do? He kept telling us through other people, look, I love you, I created you for a purpose. I have come to save you. I don't care whether you have sinned, and so I'm still coming after you. You know, I'm still going to look for you. I still want you to be close to me. And like we didn't hear that message too well. And so love itself, which is God, said, well, the other fellas didn't work, the other ladies didn't work. I come in myself to tell you that. And that's the message of Christmas. And I think that God coming himself to us as a human being to communicate with us and to share the message of salvation, how we must live, what we should believe in, and how we should live in this world. I think that's something to celebrate. It doesn't matter if you feel sad at Christmas. I think simply the affirmation that God has come and lived amongst us, as St. John said, he pitched his tent amongst us. I think that's a wonderful moment. One theologian, famous one, Karl Rahner, put it as, Christmas is God's permission for us to be happy. You know, he said, be happy at this time, be happy, you know, my son has come.
It's interesting, right? Because when you put it like that, now I have so many questions. Because, you know, if you're saying he came himself to say, all right, I'm going to put myself in human form to give you the message directly. And now, in 2024, we're in a place where you're safe. You still feel as though the meaning for the season is lost. You still feel as though, did we listen to the message when it came directly?
Yes. And therefore the message has to be passed on.
Right.
And that is where tradition comes in, and the institution that passes it on is the church. As broken and as sinful as she is and has been sometimes, it is the main institutional structure through which we pass on the message of salvation, the scriptures, the stories of Jesus, and so on, from womb to tomb, as they say. And so we continue to pass on that message. And it's important to remember that often we think of Christmas and we stop. If we think of the Gospel of St. John, his prologue, chapter 1, he says, in Christ the light has come into the world, and the light of the darkness did not overpower. So Christmas is a light feast, but it's really pointing to a bigger light feast. And the bigger light feast is Easter.
Right.
But Easter does not submit very easily to the commercialism you see.
Right.
You know, a dead man, somebody suffering, and this kind of thing.
Not as appealing.
Yeah.
Not as appealing as a brand new baby.
Yeah, a little baby, a little popo in a crib,
manger,
and everybody come in and that
barely
kind
a
of
crib.
thing.
Was it the hay?
Manger, yes, a manger in a animal's trough and so on. So people are coming.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more easy to commercialize Christmas and so on.
Easier to sell. It's easier to sell.
So Easter always faces a challenge, but that Christmas light points to this much bigger light,
Right.
which is the victory of Christ over death. That after being dead for 3 days, he rises from the dead and so on. And that really is the bedrock of Christian faith. Christmas's meaning would be incomplete. It would just say, look, the boss came in the person of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But was he victorious? Christmas doesn't tell you that.
Right.
You have to wait till Easter, and Easter says, yes, he was victorious through a very horrible experience, you know, betrayal and crucifixion and so on, but he was victorious, and therein lies our hope. And we see Christmas from that angle as well.
I want to get into a little bit more of the, I guess when you said the light, it triggered me to think about, you know, the wise men and the star, and they're following that star. Tell me the significance of that aspect of this story.
Right. So Christ, as I think it was singing Francine who said, he come for one, he come for all. Right. So the Magi story is a story of Christ drawing everybody. You know, the prophet Isaiah has in one of his readings that in the time of fulfillment, everybody will go to the mountain of the Lord. And so in the Magi, we see people coming from the east, and they are following the star because they know of this special person who is going to be born. And they come and they end up in front of the Christ child. We say 3 magi, but the Bible doesn't say 3. We infer 3 because we hear gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Right.
Yeah. And some people will have said maybe there were some women among them as well.
Quite possibly.
Some female magi also. So it's like Christ freely giving his wisdom and knowledge to anyone who seeks. And he has come to draw everyone to himself. The Magi story does not end with the conversion of the Magi. The passage never says that they became Christians or anything like that. But it did say that they went back home by following a different route, and that's a metaphor. What is a different route?
Okay.
All right, and that's what Christ does. Even if you don't become Christian, an encounter with him changes you if you are open to it.
But in a technical sense, there would not have been Christianity as yet.
No. Not yet. In fact, you know, Jesus was a Jew. His parents were Jews.
Right.
And that came afterwards. Yes.
Okay. Nice. So in terms of the kindness, the love, and all that stuff that you mentioned, that people still, you know, you still share those messages of hope, those messages of love. Is that enough for Christmas, or do we need to still go deeper?
No, I think we need to go deeper because I think the prevailing philosophy is a healthy, vibrant social humanism. But where does that social humanism find its deepest meaning? And for us, you know, who profess the Christian faith, the deepest meaning of that is Christ. That God himself is the source of goodness. We are living in an age where we are living off, one can say, the moral heritage of Christianity, but not its theological heritage. So we like the goodness, the love, the sharing, the compassion, and so on. But if you go back far enough, you will see where that comes from. And it comes from more than just a humanism. It comes from, I should say, a transcendental humanism, a humanism in which God himself became human. So it's not a pure humanism, but it's a transcendental humanism, that God came to us and shows us how to discover his divine in us, or deep self.
How do we dig further into ourselves to be able to understand that divinity within?
Well, we have to read the Christmas stories again as stories. Sometimes we read them too scientifically, and we start asking all the wrong questions, like what was the fruit that Adam and Eve ate?
Right.
Where was the garden and things like that? They're the wrong questions. One has to enter into these stories spiritually. And one of the stories today is that that when Jesus was born, there was no room in the inn. And we can explore that in a contemporary way today, In what ways do we find that there is no room in the inn? And there are several aspects we can explore. Children who are aborted, for instance, especially late-stage abortion, they are not allowed space. Just as in Jesus' time, when his parents were searching for space for him to be born, space was denied him. And millions of babies are aborted, sometimes, without batting an eye. I know that there are circumstances, economic circumstances, family circumstances, and so on. But I think abortion is one instance in which space is denied someone who has a right to be here. But we can also say that of migrants. It is said today that we have about 20 million migrants.
Right.
And migrants are people searching for space.
Right.
And often when they go, they are told no room in the inn, and things like that. So I think it challenges us. People complain about the homelessness in Port of Spain and so on, all under the banks in Independence Square. Homelessness is a sign that people are saying, my community does not have space for me anymore. And so what do we need to do to reverse that?
I feel like I get where you're coming from. I feel like all of those things you mentioned have other layers that go along with it as well.
Yeah, yes.
That make it a little more complicated. But I get the general gist of where you're coming from.
Yes.
So if it is we are to make space, be it for migrants or people to feel safe and comfortable, how do we go about searching for that opportunity to make space for people? How do I make more space?
Well, I think making space is not something to be left to one person or even one religion. It is said today that the crisis we face in the world today cannot be solved by any one religious body, and that's true. We have to work, on one hand, ecumenically together as Christians. Then we have to work in an interfaith manner with people of other religions. We have to work with NGOs, with non-believers or searchers to try to create space. And creating space is not easy because discomfort is a considerable part of the Christmas story. You have this pregnant girl and her husband, and they have to move to get registered, as the story tells us. And so they leave and they travel many miles on the back of a donkey. That could not be easy.
Or comfortable.
Yes, and then you had a flight into Egypt, where you encounter different culture, different food, different people, different customs. It's not very comfortable. And then as they are settled there, they are told, okay, it's safe now, and you may go back to Bethlehem. And so they go back again. So it's always, and then in the inn as well, if it means somebody made room for them, even though there was no room in the inn. And that too requires effort. So reversing things means that I'm going to impose a certain amount of discomfort on myself to make certain things happen.
I hear you. Father Sirju, thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing this information, the perspective, and the reminders. Before we wrap this morning, I want you to just look into this camera over here and just wish Trinidad and Tobago a Merry Christmas, however you choose to do so.
I truly wish all of Trinidad and Tobago all the blessings, the peace, the joy of the Christmas season. And remember that Christ became one like you. And never forget that. You are an icon of Christ.
Father Martin Sirju, Vicar General, joining us this morning to share in the true meaning of Christmas. We take a quick break and come back with more in our morning show. Stick around.
From wickedness and chaos, put Jesus in your Christmas this year.